Okay, hello. We are starting our recording for our getting in tune with your hormones and your health while staying at home, because there's lots you can do on your own. And also Dr. Laura does virtual. So we're going to dive right in because we have lots of questions about digestion and fertility and hormones. So Dr. Laura, take it away.
I'm so happy to be back here, Vanessa, with the ladies community. Such an awesome group of women, always such a joy, and we have a lot of great questions tonight. So let's dive in. Let me first start out with kind of making the connection with the digestion piece and the hormones. I know that comes up a lot, and sometimes people don't even think it's hormonal, but then they start to put two and two together. So bloating and constipation or just changes in your digestive habits are actually very common a week before our periods, really the second half of our cycle, but usually the week one right before. So why is that? And not everyone experiences that symptom, but a lot of women do. The two main reasons why I find women experience that bloating or indigestion or feeling like they're holding on to a lot of water weight is often because of excess estrogen. So too much of that female hormone estrogen the week before their period and not enough of progesterone, which is our balancing hormone, which is a natural water reduction hormone so that we don't hold on to water weight and feel more bloated. So if you have an imbalance, either too much of one or too little of the other, you will get that sensation of bloating and indigestion the week before. And that can be really uncomfortable. I know a lot of women also see the scale go up. So it's not just like how they feel, they actually are gaining some water weight, 5 or 7 pounds in some cases. So that's a really important piece to consider. I also want to highlight as well that the reason people often ask me, well, why do I have too much estrogen? What's going on? How do I get my progesterone to go up and my estrogen to go down? Well, hormones are really important for us to be aware of, but they are also changing. So our environment, our stress levels, whether we consume a lot of alcohol or caffeine, whether we're on prescription drugs, including birth control. These are things that will affect a woman's hormone levels, and what might have been okay before has maybe kind of come out of balance now. So if you've been at a place in your life where hormones have not been an issue or bloating has not been an issue, but it is now, I really want you to tune into your body and say, well, what is different? And if you don't know what's different, that's completely okay. But we want to first make that connection and say, is my digestive symptom happening only the second half of my cycle? Meaning 2 or 3 weeks after my initial period had started. And if that's always the case, when there's a little bit more of a worsening of those digestive symptoms, then we've got to start looking at the hormones a little bit more closely. So for those individuals that are thinking, okay, well, what can I do for the bloating? What can I do? I think when we think about those hormonal imbalances, we want to first say there is a lot we can do that are simple, but we also want to say that hormone balances doesn't happen overnight. And we don't just miraculously go from hormone symptoms to everything's completely fine the next day or the next cycle. So we want to be aware of that things take time. But in terms of easy things we can do now to reduce bloating, a lot of people say, well, I'm afraid to drink water because I'm already feeling bloated. But a lot of women are actually dehydrated, and basically, not to bore people with sciencey stuff, but really that water balance, whether you're drinking too little or too much, can definitely affect how you feel. And I feel when women are feeling that bloated sensation, they tend to under-consume water, or they're consuming more caffeine because they're probably tired too and just feeling more sluggish. And unfortunately, caffeine dehydrates us. So I'm always telling my patients and my clients that if you are feeling that bloating a week before, think about reducing your caffeine. Think about increasing your water. And I always say, start your day with a little bit of lemon water and even add in a pinch of sea salt or pink Himalayan salt, because that's a natural Gatorade for your body to start to flush excess water out, but still keep you hydrated from within. I'm not sure if you've tried that, Vanessa.
So yes, every morning, lemon water with a touch of sea salt because of you.
Perfect. I love that. So I just want, women that are listening to this to say, okay, more water isn't going to worsen my bloating. It might feel that way initially if you're consuming a lot at once, but if you're gradually increasing the water that you consume, you are going to notice that, okay, things are flushing out of your system a lot faster. Remember, if hormone imbalances are what's causing our symptoms, we definitely want to think about flushing those things out as soon as we can. Another thing that women can start to do if they are feeling bloated is dandelion tea. So dandelion is a herb. It's a green. You can buy it at Whole Foods and grocery stores. You can cook it and saute it, but it's also in a tea. It's a very common herbal tea. It is caffeine free, as I said. So it's a really great way to flush out excess water buildup, which I love. If you're feeling bloated or puffy, as I mentioned, then this is a great way for you to start to debloat, especially the week before your period, which unfortunately is when things are at their worst. So consider that as well.
Is there a difference between using, let's say, actual lemons versus lemon oil, or how can we digest the oil the same as the real, or does it make a difference?
Yeah, the lemon oil, like a lemon essential oil, is a great add-on. It does have some properties to it, but it comes from the peel. So when I'm talking about lemon juice, I'm talking about the pulp. That's a great point. They both have similar properties in some sense. They're both from lemon, but they're actually different. The reason why the lemon juice is helpful is it's adding potassium, which is naturally part of the lemon pulp, and you're going to have that's an electrolyte, that's a salt. So it's going to help your body absorb the water even more so, and it has some natural vitamin C. So I say if you're on the go and in a pinch, the lemon essential oil is great. It's just good for calming and digestive support in general, but it is a little bit different than lemon juice. Yeah, that's a great point.
And then we have a question coming in too about bloating pre-menopause and post-menopause and how that might differ.
Yes. So in a way, it makes it a little bit more challenging, but also a little bit more simple when we're postmenopausal in a way, because we don't have those same hormonal fluctuations. So the first thing I'd want to know is if the bloating is constant, or if there's still like this unknown rhythm that's happening. Sometimes I'm bloated, sometimes I'm not. If it's a generalized bloating, especially if you're not getting your cycle anymore, then we really want to think about what's going on in the gut. Unfortunately, when estrogen goes too low, which is very common, this is the normal part of menopause, when we don't have our cycle anymore, our main hormone, estrogen, falls. And when it falls, it can throw off our liver and our gallbladder, which can unfortunately not help us digest food. So if estrogen falls because of menopause, a lot of women will actually find they get right-sided pain on their right side when they eat a fatty meal or a processed meal or a large meal. And that has a lot to do with the liver and the gallbladder. So I actually think the dandelion tea would be still a fantastic support because it works on the liver as well as bloating in general.
Can we actually chat a little bit more about bloating and how much bloating is normal versus I'm just eating and digesting? Because I know even when I talk to my boyfriend, men have a higher tolerance of their stomach protruding than women. So how much is normal and when should we actually be concerned?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in general, we never want, bloating is simply gas or air building up in our digestive tract. Now the question is, why are we getting that? Is there pressure from excess fluid? Is there pressure from too much food? There's a lot of reasons of why, but in general, bloating might happen, and it does happen, I should say, after eating a meal. There's a level of your stomach distending a little bit, right? We filled our stomach with food. It was empty prior to eating. We maybe had some liquids to go with that. It's normal to have the stomach feel more full, and perhaps the abdomen, like our stomachs, protrude out a little bit. But when people talk about bloating, they're typically talking about it's uncomfortable, it's noticeable, and if they were to press on their stomach, they might feel those kind of gassy kind of bubbles, pain, discomfort that they can actually feel. And if it's lasting more than half an hour after a meal, when you've kind of stopped the first phase of digestion, if you're getting bloating after that half hour, you really want to think about, okay, now food's in my intestines, it's in the rest of my gut, things are not feeling good, or they're not as comfortable as they once were. So that's definitely a sign that there's something going on there that needs to be worked on. And if you didn't eat a large meal, then you want to think about, what is going on in the gut? Are things imbalanced? But if you just had a large meal, don't worry about it. It's very normal to have that sensation. And most of us can think about Thanksgiving dinner, for example. We know what it's like to overeat and feel uncomfortable. But if that's happening with regular meals, then we do want to look at what's going on.
That's awesome. Yeah, ladies, do you have any other questions about bloating and what you can do right now? Obviously there's more to it, and you might need to get, and I know we talk about this all the time, Laura, but getting your hormones tested.
Yeah.
so that you know what's right and wrong. And the thing that I always emphasize that I had an aha moment when working with you is that I had symptoms of high estrogen, but I didn't actually have high estrogen. I had
Mhm.
low progesterone. So then
Yeah.
I had symptoms of high estrogen. And you knowing like what's going on and what may be causing this bloating is completely custom to you.
Totally. Yeah. And that's a great point. So the two main hormones, estrogen and progesterone, they can kind of sneakily look like a certain symptom, but we really need to know what's going on with your body. Because if you have excess estrogen, the treatment is different than low progesterone. But some of these things that we mentioned already, like changing the diet to reduce the bloat, that can already make an impact even before you get those tested.
So then a question coming in is how does estrogen and progesterone change during your cycle? And how long does it take to change them so that if you're comparing different cycles that you may have different symptoms?
Yes. So throughout the cycle, throughout the period, throughout that generally one month long timeline, again, it's slightly different for each woman, but in general, we're going to have the ebbs and the flows throughout that 1 month period. The first half is generally estrogen rising up, and the second half is kind of progesterone catching up. And that will have its ebbs and flows within that same cycle. But to see change in your hormones, you do want to be consistent with whatever plan you're doing. So whether that's changing your diet, taking supplements, working on your liver health, whatever the case may be, you want to give it at least 2 to 3 cycles. I say 3 cycles is kind of the minimum, 3 periods, 3 times for your cycles to kind of flush out excess hormones. Because those highs and lows are happening every month, they don't happen within the same cycle too often. It can. We can work on things on day one, and by the time your next period comes, you can feel less pain, less bloated for sure. But I say, let's be honest, we want to give our bodies the time to catch up, and they do need that support and that kind of slow, gradual kind of reduction or increase in building back up. So 3 cycles is like a very good general.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a great
awesome.
question.
So what causes low progesterone or high estrogen?
So low progesterone, the two things that I see most common, and I work with a lot of women that don't know that they have low progesterone. They just have really irregular cycles, or they're maybe having difficulty getting pregnant or staying pregnant. And there's a lot of other things around that. Low progesterone typically is caused by an issue with ovulation, which is your egg being released every month. So middle of your cycle, if you, again, ideally are looking to get pregnant or not, that egg being released is the important part of a woman's hormonal cycle. If you're not ovulating for other reasons, it could be a thyroid issue, it could be PCOS, it could be issues with going on with your body weight. You're at a different body weight for your own health, and there could be some issues with that. Long story short, if there is an issue with ovulation, women will see low progesterone. If that happens, then unfortunately, the second half of that cycle that we were talking about, when progesterone rises up to kind of let everyone feel calm and relax and have your period happen as normal, that doesn't happen if progesterone is low. A lot of women will find they're getting spotting and things like that as well. Another reason why progesterone might be low is stress. And in this time of the world that we're living in right now, stress can not only push back ovulation, making your period a lot longer, it can also kind of shorten things and create that faster cycle, usually lighter or not your normal period, and not when you expected it can also happen because stress can decrease your body's progesterone output. It's kind of like a competition. It's like, do we want to focus on fertility this month, guys, or do we want to focus on keeping someone in survival mode? And unfortunately, the higher the stress, the less likely that your progesterone will be high enough that month. That's a great question. We love talking about progesterone.
So you ladies are doing amazing with these questions today. Keep them coming. Let's chat. You talked about fertility. So can we chat a little bit more about fertility and what women should keep in mind if they're having fertility issues?
Yes. Okay. That's a big topic, but I will try and keep it sort of focused for what women can start doing now and think about. I first want to highlight that fertility concerns are not uncommon. They're really common, and everyone's journey is unique. But what I will say is that the stress piece is very, very important when it comes to addressing fertility. And I know it's easier said than done, but we first want to understand, and most women that work with me, they want to understand, if they can, what is going on? Why is the body not reaching its optimal fertility, right? Why are we not able to conceive? Some women are able to get pregnant, they just can't stay pregnant. So there's a few, differences there that I want to understand. But the importance for a woman to know what's going on with their body is so valuable at lowering stress. If we think everything's out of our control, we don't know, maybe we're relying on hormones, maybe we're not, maybe we're just hoping that this month will be different. That's a lot of stress for women to put on themselves, on their bodies. And that, unfortunately, decreases potentially their optimal fertility levels, because cortisol is our stress hormone and it can reduce progesterone, as we talked about. So it's a vicious cycle, but we can break the cycle. And I always encourage women to know what's going on in their bodies. Obviously, into intuitive listening, intuitive eating, those are very, very vital. But if you have a low progesterone issue, for example, very common, you need to understand that that could be one of the areas that is focused on. And it's not always focused on with regular conventional medicine. So I had a patient a few months ago. She had a lot of, unfortunately, several miscarriages, but she had PCOS. So we knew that in that first trimester, after she got her positive pregnancy test, we gave her extra progesterone, a natural progesterone cream to help her in her first trimester. And she got through, and then obviously was fine second and third trimester, and now has a beautiful baby boy. So this idea that knowing what is going on in your body is so empowering. And it doesn't mean you have to have all the answers, but I think women are sometimes misled to think it's just bad luck or bad genes. And that is so far from the truth. So I want women to know that if they can understand what needs to be balanced and where they can support themselves, and they can at least hopefully start to reduce some of those stress hormones that they might not be aware are running in the background.
Yeah, I actually think that now that we're all home, it's a really good time to see, when you slow down, were you more stressed than you think you were? Where you go, 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 go. For me, I was go, 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 go for so many years that my progesterone really just needed to pick up and learn how to produce again. And I wouldn't have considered myself as stressed, but I was just always on the move, and I just needed to move slower and just be more calm.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. And it does take time. So also, when we're thinking about if you're in the fertility space right now, and women that are tuning in are trying to get pregnant, obviously that's an individual journey for everyone. But for women that might be thinking about pregnancy down the road, I generally recommend, if you have time ahead of time before you're planning on actively trying, give yourself 3 to 6 months to reset, to refuel, to give yourself the opportunity to build up your stores of important nutrients. And as you mentioned, Vanessa, build up those hormones like progesterone by reducing stress if possible. Again, if that's not where you're at right now and you're actively trying, that's fine. But if you are thinking of down the road becoming pregnant, giving yourself that 3 to 6 month window to prepare your body will optimize your chances of conceiving.
Yeah, awesome. So there's some more questions coming through. Does anyone have any other questions about pregnancy or fertility before we move on to some of these other questions that we see here? I'll just give you a moment to come in. Does blood type affect the types of nutrients that you need during pregnancy?
That's a great question, actually. So meaning, like, are you blood type A or O? Yeah.
I've heard that, I'm blood type O, and I was seeing, this was a while ago in LA, and I don't know if it was just an LA thing, but she's like, oh, you're blood type O, so when you get pregnant, you have to have more bison and iron. Do you see different trends in blood type and how that affects people's hormones and nutrients, or no?
I do see women craving certain foods, whether before getting pregnant or when they're pregnant, depending on their blood type. Like O is a good example. They tend to more meats, or at least when they're pregnant, they're craving more of those iron-rich foods. And that generally kind of follows that blood type diet sort of blueprint. Blood type B or A tend to be more plant-based. Generally, they crave more lentils, plant-based proteins, not a lot of the animal proteins. And there are everything in between as well, depending on, again, when you're pregnant, things can definitely change. So I'd say, if you're following that intuitive diet that feels good for you, going with cravings, going with the foods that you know are going to be nutritious, but that your body is asking for, is always a foolproof positive thing.
Neat. Yeah. So I think I don't see any more questions coming in about pregnancy or fertility, but I see a lot of questions about spotting, lack of periods. One woman in here is saying she hasn't had a period for 9 months. And so what are some things that people should consider if they have irregular periods and spotting?
Yes. So the first question I'd want to know is, and women should think about this, is how long has this been going on? So if it's spotting or one off, 1 or 2 cycles, again, thinking of our 3 cycle kind of minimum for balancing hormones, think of that same 3 cycle or 3 period general timeline for changes in our period. So if things are spotting week 1 or 2 weeks later after your period, you're spotting now, and that normally doesn't happen. You want to think about if it's just a one-off, I want you to reflect on that, maybe record it in one of your apps, and then think about, okay, let's keep an eye on this, because a one-off is very possible with our diet, with traveling, changing time zones, stress, all the things that we spoke about earlier can very much change one cycle, and it can go back to the normal. If it's not 1 cycle or 2 cycles, and this has been going on for a while, there was a question about 9 months, not having a period, you'd want to look into, did you just come off the birth control pill? If you did, that's definitely a very possible thing. And I always recommend women work with a naturopath or a functional doctor, someone that can help get their hormones back on track if they're off the pill. And if they're not on the pill, and this is their new normal for them, or the normal that's been there for a while, irregular periods, long periods with no actual bleeding, then you want to think about getting your hormones tested. Very, very important, because the longer you let things go, the more we don't know what the normal is anymore. And knowing what your hormones are doing now is so vital. I just can't tell you how empowering it is to know what's going on in your body from a hormonal standpoint. So with the irregular cycles or no cycles at all, it's usually a lack of ovulation. And there's an issue with, again, that middle of the cycle hormone rise. And it might be PCOS, it might not be, but always double check on the timeline for you to see, okay, what is this saying about my normal, and how far off my normal is this?
So I guess before seeing you, how can people empower themselves and get as much information as possible? So I noticed there's actually quite a few people who are mentioning spotting a week before your period, daily spotting. Should they be tracking then now with the days that spotting occurs, when they have their period, and how long it lasts?
Definitely. That's the first step. Track, get the information, because a lot of times we think we know, and we might know some details, but if we thought, well, what happened last month, or how many days did it go on last month, and we don't have the answers, there's so many apps to kind of specifically say, is this an actual bleed, a very light bleed, or is this just spotting, and understanding how far you are from your cycle. Again, in general, most spotting is happening the second half of our cycle and towards our next expected period. If spotting is happening in the first week or 2, that's less common. And again, you'd want to know what's going on with your hormones. But generally, it's that second half, and usually because of low progesterone. Something that they can do, aside from that tracking, which I call seed cycling. So seed cycling kind of looks at a general 30-day cycle, and it kind of generally aligns with the moon cycles, but it doesn't have to. It has to go with based on your last period. And you eat certain number of seeds. You eat pumpkin seeds and ground flax seeds for the first 14 days, and the second 14 days you're going to eat sunflower or sesame seeds, or both. So if you can simply Google seed cycling. There's so many great posts on this. But that second half, first half balance can really help women balance out their progesterone that second half and get their body into a rhythm so that they're not spotting before their next period is due.
I actually had never heard of this until you just posted about this today.
Oh, okay. There you go.
That was the first. I was like, what is she talking about? This seed cycling? Yeah. Well, so then is it the nutrients that the seeds are giving you?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So mostly omega-3s for the first half, and then omega-6s for the second half. And like I said, if you Google that, there's a lot of information out there. Some are with foods. Traditionally, it is with those seeds. If you have an allergy or something else, of course, you can do supplements. But this is the general food as medicine guide, and really being clear on those 2 separations. Remember, we have those ebbs and flows each of our cycles. Doing the same thing all month long, actually, for most women, doesn't make a lot of sense, even though I know a lot of us do it. Making those changes the first and second half can get your body back into that rhythm easier.
Can you just repeat that? We have a couple questions. So the first half, what seed?
Yeah, so it's going to be pumpkin seeds and ground flaxseed. I'm saying ground flaxseed because you can't eat whole flaxseed. They need to be ground up for you to get the nutrition. So
Okay.
pumpkin and ground flax for the first half, which is generally 14 days. And the second half will be your sesame and your sunflower.
Great.
Sesame and sunflower for the second half. And that's your second 14 days. Or if you have a 30-day cycle, it happens every 30 days. You get your period, do 15 and 15. If you don't have a cycle at all, when do you start? You start with the moon. So the next new moon, you start on day 1, and then your full moon will be your second half of your cycle, just to get your body back into a rhythm.
Great. And then how often, how many times a day, how do you consume the seeds?
Yes, it's 2 tablespoons. So it's 2 tablespoons of those seeds a day. Usually, if in a perfect world, I'll do a little bit of ground flax and a little bit of pumpkin, like in my oatmeal or in my smoothie. Total would be 2 tablespoons of those seeds. If you only have one of those seeds, like only pumpkin seeds, well, then just do that for the first half, but it's still 2 tablespoons for each of those days.
And does it matter what time of day, morning, evening? When should people consume the vitamins?
Totally not. No change in terms of when they need to do it. Of course, if they're taking certain prescription medications or iron or prenatal, if we're dealing with fertility, then obviously you want to keep that away from the fiber, because there's a lot of fiber and that will bind to some of those important supplements that you're taking. So as long as it's with the rest of your food, there's no time of day specifically.
That is really cool. I need to start doing that. I just finished my period. So now I'm in my first part of the cycle, right?
Yes.
So
you
now
could do
I'm
the
in
pumpkin.
flax and pumpkin.
That's right.
Okay. This is fun. Cool. Okay. So let's go back to the questions. Any questions about this seed? And what's it called? Seed
cycling.
Seed cycling. And what app? I know when I worked with you, you told me to use the app Flow to track. Is that still an app that you would recommend for people?
I love Flow. I think there's Clue, Fertility Friend. There's a couple out there and most of them are free. I think it just comes down to what you're already using. So if the ladies out there are already using an app, stick with it. But if you're brand new to tracking your period and your cycles, then definitely Clue, Flow, Fertility Friend. There's a lot of free ones that are easy to track.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So let me see. Okay, let's chat a little bit about sexual desire. How does that impact bloating and your hormones?
Right. So we'll call it libido, right? That kind of desire, wanting to be intimate. In general, that is a very healthy sign of overall health and longevity and vitality. We want that. The most common reasons why that might be decreased would be low testosterone, low estrogen, or high cortisol. So low testosterone, low estrogen, high cortisol. Low estrogen looks like menopause. So you could be on the pill that often kills libido for a lot of women because it suppresses your estrogen. Again, I'm generalizing here. This is not always the case for every woman, but generally low estrogen, either you're in menopause or you're on the pill. And if you've recently had these symptoms come up, check those 2 checkpoints to see if one of those situations responds to you. The second thing is obviously going to be the lower testosterone. Now, lower testosterone, everyone thinks that's a male hormone. It's absolutely not. It's a female hormone as well. We just don't have as much as men do. But if that is low, and there's different reasons for that, low fat diet, some hormone metabolism changes, there's a lot of things. Post-pregnancy, those levels can be lower. And if testosterone is lower, you'll have low libido, so kind of low desire, but you'll also feel tired. You feel maybe a little bit more, women will say they feel puffier or flabbier. They can't build as much muscle, even if they're being active and working out. Those are hallmark signs of lower testosterone. And then probably the most common, of course, is our high cortisol, our stress hormone. People think, oh, I'd be active, I'd be go, go, go. For sure, that is part of it. But when you start to get depleted or you're in that go, go, go headspace, usually you're not relaxed enough to have that desire. And think about it. Mother Nature doesn't make mistakes. If we're go, 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 we probably have a lot on our plate, or at least mentally we think we do, and our body would not put us in a place to try and get pregnant. Again, in an ideal kind of evolutionary sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about the supplements? So a question here about recommended supplements, and
Mhm.
are there supplements we should or should not be taking together?
Yeah, the biggest issues with supplements are usually to do with iron and calcium. So, in general, for women that are not postmenopausal, so they're still getting their periods, I generally recommend you don't take an added calcium supplement. If you're taking a multivitamin, there's a little bit of calcium in there, there's probably a little bit of iron in there, that's fine. Take that with food and take that away from your morning coffee or caffeinated beverage. So if you have black tea or something with caffeine in it, you want to take those multivitamins, anything that contains calcium or iron, away from that. But generally speaking, all the other vitamins can be taken together as long as it's away from the iron and the calcium containing multivitamins. So I say separate the other ones, maybe with lunch or with dinner, or if you have a snack mid-morning, you can take the rest then.
Now, we also have a question about probiotics, which I want to give a personal testimonial to, because the probiotics you might be taking may not be right for you. So I actually got my digestive system all, tested and analyzed with Dr. Laura. So I literally like pooed in little vials. And then they test what is needed. And my results versus my boyfriend's results, completely different. We needed completely different probiotics. I actually didn't even need a probiotic, and I thought I did because of my bloating, when my boyfriend needed one and his, was completely different. So be careful with the probiotics, but I know you can talk more to that.
Yes. And, in general, probiotics are such a very, it's a big area of health supplement. So I want people to understand that this is a very common part of concern. A lot of people don't know what they should be taking, how much. A low dose probiotic is not going to typically cause harm. And when I say low dose, I mean like 10 billion or 15 billion is typically not going to be an issue for you, for most people. I definitely recommend to, if you can, again, get tested, know what's in your gut. Have you been on the birth control pill? That will throw off your gut bacteria balance. Have you been on antibiotics? Most of us have at least once. That will throw off your gut bacteria. Have you traveled anywhere outside your normal location, hometown? Again, different bacteria, different water, etc. So what you need versus someone else, exactly like you said, Vanessa, is so different. But I do know a lot of the people that I work with are already on probiotics when I start working with them. So in general, I say look out for a low dose. So always try and do low dose, 10 to 15 billion. More is not always better, especially if you don't know what's going on in your gut. Make sure you're on a probiotic, if you are going to be on one, that's dairy-free. And it should say dairy-free on the label. A lot of them are, but a lot of them are not. And even if you don't have a dairy allergy, it's bloating, it's hard to digest. A lot of people have issues with those dairy-containing probiotics. So unless you know that that's not you for sure, always err on the side of caution. So it's going to be easier for your body to use, and sticking with a lower dose probiotic, 10 to 15 billion, and a dairy-free probiotic is definitely going to set you up for success while you're maintaining your gut health and trying to work on some other issues and hopefully getting some answers with gut testing. But you know me, I want to test everything because I know every body is so unique. But hey,
Yeah.
you can start somewhere in the meantime.
It's so cool. Honestly, I've never felt more empowered and full of knowledge when I got my testing done. And so, just a quick question about calcium. Why shouldn't we be taking extra calcium?
So extra calcium for women that are still having their cycles, they have estrogen in their system, they have enough bone building strength. Added calcium can actually be harmful. And there's been a lot of studies way back when, 10, 15, 20 years ago. I know my mom, my grandmother, they were prescribed high dose calcium, 1,000 milligrams, 1,500 milligrams to promote your bone health. And that actually led to more heart attacks. The more calcium that we take in, unfortunately, if our bones can't use it, because they cannot use that much calcium, it goes into our arteries. And if you're 25 or 35 or 45 and not worried about that right now, that's fine. But in general, we want to think about ahead of time. So only taking what you need. The best ways to get better bone health are going to be things like exercise, eating enough protein. Obviously, some nutrients are important, but not high dose of a standard calcium. Most women, it's way too much that their body doesn't even use anyway. So it unfortunately can cause some heart problems potentially down the road.
So what supplements do you currently use?
Oh gosh.
I know if you have to follow her on Instagram too. You're really good at sharing what you're using. Her Instagram handle is at Dr. Laura Belus, and you can see her name right there.
Yeah.
And then she also has her health club where she posts all tons of information monthly on hormones, and it's so fascinating to watch. So yeah.
So I'll just say, yes, following me is probably the shorter end of things. But what I will say is I always customize my supplements. I never take the exact same thing for years and years on end, with maybe a couple exceptions. Like I've always taken a B complex for stress and hormones and mood. That's always great. But I'm always adding and taking away. And again, just to be honest, if I'm being completely honest, it's because I'm testing. I tested my own hormones last year. I tested my nutrient levels and my gut health this past winter. Like I only took supplements that I added to my list, not because I wanted to take more pills, but because I wanted to balance myself back out, and then I can scale back. But to be honest, most people should be on some sort of either multivitamin, omega-3, and if you don't know your vitamin D levels, get those tested, or at least take the very, very minimum, which is 1,000. And those are important, what we call foundational nutrients. So that even if you're eating a super clean diet, most of us live busy, stressful lives, and we need that extra fuel for our tank.
What brands should people be purchasing and or considering when purchasing a multivitamin or the other ones that you recommended?
Yes. So there are a lot of great brands out there. That's actually what we're really, what's great about modern medicine is so many companies are stepping up and really delivering great products. But I will say that, having said that piece, be mindful. Where you buy your supplements, what I buy for my health, what I buy to help my body is probably not the place that I buy my toilet paper. I do not want you guys just there's no judgment here on cost. This whole month inside her health club, I'm talking about health on a budget. Even if you could just afford one good quality supplement, it might cost you 60 or 70 cents a day. Most of us could probably afford that. And I want to highlight that quality always over quantity. So in general, if you buy supplements from a health food store, if it's not the cheapest one on the shelf, again, more expensive is not always better, but generally the low cost ones that are very, very low cost, like drugstore brands or big bulk store brands, unfortunately, you just will not get the right dosage. You won't get the right form, meaning your body might not be able to absorb it all. And then you're just wasting money. And I hope that most of those supplements aren't harmful. But the idea here is buy the quality stuff that you can afford, get a few customized recommendations, and then just spend the rest of your budget on groceries or a better quality food if that makes more sense. But buying cheap supplements, I think, does more harm than good. So health food store quality always, and if you can get a doctor's recommendation, even better.
How often should people be testing to know what products they should be purchasing?
Like your annual blood work, I always recommend at least once a year. You don't have to test everything and anything. Last year I did my hormones. This past winter I did my gut and my nutrient levels. And I still hope most people are going to see their medical doctor for some basic levels of blood work. But just on top of that, like once a year is probably a good benchmark. And I'm definitely guilty of this, or I was years ago before, moving into this profession, where, if you're feeling good, you're feeling pretty healthy. I mean, we don't really need to test our hormones, or we don't need to test our blood work, but a lot of things can come out of that. And if we don't know what your normal is now, how do we know what to compare that to? So yes, the advanced tests are great, but even as a bare minimum, just your basic blood work once a year. And I did a whole Instagram stories on this in my IGTV. So if you want to learn what basic blood work I asked my medical doctor for, you can definitely tune into that.
Cool. Can we chat a little bit more about food? What can people be eating now that they're home to help balance their estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone?
Yes. So let's talk about maybe 3 foods that we should eat more of, and then 3 foods we should avoid or limit. And I know avoid, I don't like that word because it's like all or nothing. Do your best to avoid or limit. So the biggest food categories to eat more of or to consume more of would definitely be your cruciferous veggies. That is your broccoli family of vegetables. So broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, those are all the really hearty ones that will help to reduce your estrogen. They also can be hard to digest. So if you're already having bloating, you want to think about adding them cooked adding them to already a meal you're eating where you're kind of consuming a decent sized meal. So you're already digesting the rest of your food. And you want to start with slower, smaller quantities. If you never eat broccoli or you always get bloated with cauliflower, don't start there. Start with a small cooked amount and work your way up. Another category or another area, which we spoke about earlier with the seed cycling, ground flaxseed. So important for excess estrogen, great for painful periods, heavy periods, fibroids. It's such an amazing food. I love to add it to smoothies. And again, if your cycles are regular, you can do it every day. But if you're doing the seed cycling, you might want to focus more heavily on that ground flaxseed for the first 14 days. And then the last food, it's not really a food, but it's the lemon water that we were talking about. So many women are managing, adrenal stress. They're trying to balance out their progesterone. Maybe they're having digestive issues. Starting with lemon water, like I said, half a lemon. If you can, squeeze that in room temperature water and a pinch of sea salt or Himalayan pink salt to get your body going and hydrated better than plain water. That can be a game changer for energy and for digestion overall. So those are the three things I would definitely recommend in terms of foods. Now, foods to avoid. I don't know how much I'm going to be liked after I start to say these food categories, but dairy products, number one. A couple of reasons for that. Not everyone has an issue with dairy. Don't get me wrong. Some people can digest it. I come from a background culturally that we grew up eating a lot of dairy. I actually do a pretty good job eating it. But I will tell you that there is a connection between how painful often our periods are and what we're consuming that earlier month. So if you're eating a lot of dairy, and you normally do, even if that's even more than twice a week, I encourage you to try a month off and see if you notice anything different. It's very inflammatory. And for women, that means pain, water weight gain for sure. So if this is only a month test, it's worth it. And that is a big, big, big thing. Second would be sugar. So sugar, I get this question a lot. Fruit does not count. I'm not talking about fruit. I'm talking about added processed sugars, things in sauces and granola bars and added sugar in our flavored yogurts. You want to avoid those added sugars whenever possible. Sweeten your fruits naturally with fruit or stevia. Try not to add a ton of sugar into flavored drinks or coffees and things like that, because that again is inflammatory, which can cause a lot of pain and a lot of hormonal imbalance. And then the last area of food to avoid, so we have dairy products and we have refined sugar, would be fried foods. A lot of people don't make this connection. And again, if you eat out more than once a week, now we're probably all ordering in, but the idea here is if you do consume fried foods, a lot of women actually have a hard time digesting. Remember what I talked about with the liver and the gallbladder? Our digestion is also what breaks down our hormones. And if we give our bodies a lot of hard to digest foods, it's going to be busy dealing with that, and it's not going to be busy managing our estrogen and our progesterone levels. So just be mindful. Again, once a week is fine for most people, but if you're dealing with hormonal changes or bloating or indigestion, try a month without, and then just see how your body responds.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Can we chat a little bit about emotions? Because I notice that when people are asking questions, they're using emotions to describe potentially what could be causing bloating and or different things. So for example, words like overwhelm, anxiety, horniness, those are also attached to something chemical that's going on in your body. So the emotion or the feeling, how does that connect to the hormonal response within your body?
There definitely is a connection first and foremost. And I'll speak to the anxiety piece first. So anxiety, you're feeling overwhelmed or frustrated or even impatient, just feeling like you have a shorter fuse. That is very much associated with lower progesterone. Again, unfortunately, low progesterone keeps coming back in. But progesterone is our chill pill hormone. If we don't have enough, we are going to feel a little bit more on edge, easily irritated. Overwhelmed is probably the number one thing I hear women say to me. They might recognize the anxiety piece, but a lot of women say, like, I'm not anxious. I just feel like overly burdened. Like there's just too much going on, frustrated, and just feeling stuck a lot of times. So I would definitely look at lower progesterone for that. In terms of, I think we talked a bit about kind of that libido, kind of boosting libido, feeling like you want to be intimate with your partner. Definitely that would be happening around ovulation. And though I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing based on the question that came up, but that is a sign in most cases that you are ovulating. So that could be a very healthy sign mid-cycle. And again, if there's an issue with testosterone, if it's too high, which can happen with PCOS, that can also explain extra high libido or more aggression or feeling like a little bit more of a physical urge in terms of just wanting to be active or just a little bit more out there. That can also be due to elevated testosterone. So it depends on when you're feeling these emotions and depends how strong you're feeling those emotions and trying to connect the two. But I always look for mid-cycle or second half. If it's mid-cycle, it's probably more to do with ovulation and testosterone. Second half of the cycle, most likely progesterone.
Awesome. You're giving so much information. Whenever we talk, we could literally talk for hours. So I'm just going through quickly to make sure that I didn't miss anything. If I missed your question, as we just finish up, please comment it below. I think just in general, we've talked so much about progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, digestion, and supplements, and then also just getting tested so you know where you are, so you either know your balance right now and or what you need to modify to help you with fertility and your period, because you don't need to be suffering and not having your period and you always talk about this, like you don't need to be bloated, you don't need to have all of these PMS symptoms. So someone asked about, I don't know how to pronounce it, matcha, M-A-C-A.
Yeah. Maca?
Yeah, does that help balance your hormones if you put in smoothies? Or this was specifically a smoothie question, so the seed cycling might be really helpful here, but what about maca?
Maca is great for energy. It's good for libido. It actually doesn't shift your hormones specifically, but I find it works so well for women to boost energy and libido. So it's safe to take throughout your cycle. A lot of women will focus it more on the first half of their cycle, more just for, again, fertility concerns. I wouldn't recommend it while you're pregnant, but in general, before pregnancy, it's a great libido and energy tonic. So powdered maca, and it has a nice caramel flavor, so it's great adding to smoothies. Yeah, it tastes great.
Ashwagandha I really enjoy too.
Yes.
That kind of has that like calming and even libido effect too.
Yeah, ashwagandha is a powerhouse hormone balancer, and it's great for stress and all the female hormones. So that's in a category all its own. I love ashwagandha.
Love it. So another clarification about sugar. Does honey, maple syrup, that counts, doesn't it?
It does count. Yeah. It does count. Better than refined white sugar, but still, for thinking about the hormonal stressors on our system, a lot of that, again, is still going to have the same impact. If you are going to bake or make healthier recipes with honey or maple syrup, just again, having it with higher protein foods or like a high fiber food. Don't just, add a bunch of that to your coffee or tea, because it's sugar on its own causes a lot more spike. You want to be eating it with other foods to help balance it out.
So we have a couple more questions just as we finish up, ladies. Thanks for being so engaged today. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Hair. Weakening hair, thinning hair. What's going on there?
There are a lot of concerns of hair loss that I see in my practice now, and honestly, with women as young as mid-20s to like late 40s, it's everything in between. The things you want to look for with hair: thyroid. You want to look at iron; those two for sure. So if you have low thyroid, get that checked with your doctor. If you have low iron, you really want your iron or your ferritin, which is your iron hormone, to be over 40 minimum. A lot of women, if they're having heavy periods, they're probably low in iron. If they're vegetarian or mostly plant-based, they could be low iron. If you're finding you're recently just losing clumps of hair everywhere, think about what your life was like 3 or 6 months ago. There was a very stressful period. It could explain why you're having hair loss now, and that hair will likely grow back if the stress has gone down. So stress, iron, and thyroid, those are the three causes. Again, once we check them, which are not hard to check, you know what the issue is, and we fix the issue, and then our hair grows back. So that's the good news, guys.
Cool. One other hormone that I know when we did testing that came up that I wasn't expecting, what role does serotonin play in your hormones and in all of this?
Yeah, so serotonin is our mood hormone. It's really great for balancing out, again, that overall positive outlook on life. It can also help your body make the sleep hormone, which eventually would be melatonin. So if serotonin is too low, this is where depression might come in. People might be on medication for that, but you can definitely help your body boosting that up naturally with the right foods. And that includes a lot of plant-based, high fiber, high nutrient dense foods. Avocados and bananas, for example, are really great to help you boost that up.
Yeah, cool. I love all of this. You've given so much info as always. So I think what I'd love to end on is giving a little bit more clarification about this testing, because we've mentioned it so many times.
Yeah.
If they're going to go to their doctor and or, you or somebody else that they're currently working, how do they know they're getting the right test? How do they know what to test? Especially because why I decided to go to a naturopathic doctor is because a naturopathic doctor will often flag things that a normal medical doctor may not. Can you explain a little bit more about that process?
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. So naturopathic doctors, we look a little bit deeper at what's going on. So if we test your hormones, for example, there's more than one hormone. And for everything to see, kind of look okay and be balanced, your doctor might not flag that. So they might say, everything looks fine with your thyroid. Thyroid is a good example. Thyroid can be, there's the main thyroid test is called TSH. That tells us, again, a bit about weight loss, a bit about hair growth, a bit about energy, all kind of those main hormonal symptoms. And if your doctor says your thyroid is fine, but it's at 3.9 and the cutoff is 4, I, as a naturopathic doctor, would never say that that's fine because it's too close to that range, that cutoff. And where we look at our hormone levels is actually more from an optimal. What's optimal health look like? What does balanced mood look like? Healthy hair, healthy weight. What does the thyroid hormone have to be like for that? I don't really care as much about disease. I don't want you to be at a point where you need medication, but I really care about, are things optimal? And usually women will tell me they don't feel themselves. That's what brings them in. And even if their doctor says it's okay, it's not your thyroid, it's not your hormones, that is the perfect time to get a second opinion. But you do want a second opinion from someone that knows hormones so that they can tell you exactly, like you said, Vanessa, did I even get the right test done? Did I miss some hormones? And usually some are missing.
And so in your IGTV, you did say what you break down and what tests you ask for.
Yes, in my IGTV, I did a whole basic blood work panel. I walk you through some of my results and as well as some of the basics that you would ask for with your general MD. But the hormone test that I do and that I've done on myself would be the Dutch test. And that's a urine test. People can Google it or look into it, but you'd need a functional doctor or someone, naturopath, to help order that for you.
Yeah, that's the one I got. It was really cool. I think I need to get retested now though, because I've been over a year and I'd love to see what's going on now.
What's going on? Yeah. The retesting is the most fun part because then you're like, I know where I was last year, like anything, right? Am I improving? How am I doing with my whole health plan? Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can't see it. Like it's this mystery inside of us. It's like, I wish I could.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Sometimes we can see externally a little bit, but like the symptoms that you ladies are talking about tonight, but just to know more information is so useful. Has this been, obviously this has been super helpful. I don't even need to ask that question. Does anyone have any last questions before we sign off? So just to recap, go check out Dr. Laura on Instagram. You can see her panels and what you need to get tested. And then go check out her health club, see all the info that she provides every month. You can also go check out her website. You can do a virtual appointment with her if you need more info now. And then you also have a freebie online that people can get a checklist. What is that?
Yes, the balanced hormone checklist. So in the link in my Instagram bio or on my website, they can go and click freebie link or my first tab on my Instagram bio, and you can definitely grab a copy of that balanced hormone checklist. It's 10 things to do every day. Super simple. Some of the things we spoke about, some we didn't get a chance to, and these are all going to help you balance your hormones. Regardless of where you are in the spectrum, they are all things you can easily start doing today.
Awesome. And what I'm going to do too, once I upload this video, I'm going to send it all to you. Then I'm also going to send you the mini interview that Dr. Laura and I did for our online summit. Because I know there was tons of info in there. We also talked anti-aging and skin. Not too many people brought up acne, which is usually one that comes up quite often.
Yes.
And I had even sent you a message a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I'm like having these random rosacea and acne, which I fixed, by the way, which I'm super excited about with extra water.
Great.
And oddly enough, I think I just had extra bacteria from traveling that just needed to flush. So
Yeah.
if you have any additional questions, reach out. I'm going to send you a follow-up email with all of this info. Reach out to Dr. Laura. And I feel like we need to do like Q&A with Dr. Laura every few months to get all of you ladies together so that we can be talking about this information, because you don't need to struggle. And every time we do this, we see, and you must see way more than me, obviously, how much people are putting up with in their daily life and how shitty we feel on a regular basis. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can stop that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally,
Cool.
I agree. So much great feedback tonight,
Right.
and interacted with all the women that tuned in. So I love that real time back and
Right?
forth. I really
Yeah.
hope we answered a lot of questions.
That's awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And ladies, reach out. I'll send you all that info. Thank you so much for being here and for being so engaged. It made this so helpful. I hope this was helpful for you as well. And you can take away some of those tips and implement them now so you can start feeling better and just take control and power of your life. So thank you, ladies. Thanks, Dr. Laura.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.